Let's talk about alpha, confidence levels, beta, and power. I'm not going to make any excuses. This is going to be confusing. This is going to be a lot of words. This is going to be absolutely, completely conceptual.
What does CL stand for?
Confidence level.
So, it being conceptual, are we going to be able to understand the reason behind it?
That's the whole point. You need to be able to.
Okay.
Alpha and your confidence level are connected in the fact that 1 minus alpha is equal to your confidence level. That's always true. If my confidence level,
Which chapter is this?
21, confidence level were 95%, what's alpha? 5%. Easy. Alpha is also known as significance level. Okay? So let's talk about those for a minute. I am recording this, by the way.
Recording what?
What we're saying right now.
What's it like? I don't like that.
So if you misbehave, then I have evidence.
Where's the recording?
I'm going to put this online. They want us to create podcasts of class, so that if you're absent or that you need just to hear the lesson again.
Every day?
Every day that we do like a lecture explanation kind of stuff. I'm not going to record every.
Is the fish the silver brown?
Yes. The fish. Alpha. This is also, remember, called your. This is your No, sorry, not. I did.
You wrote confidence so well, too.
I know. This lets me zoom in.
Oh,
You can't see that I'm zoomed in.
That's really
It's really hard to write on this thing, actually. I'm just that good.
Not so great handwriting mixed with writing on a tablet is not.
No. Alpha is also called your significance level. Your confidence level, we're not going to talk so much about that. Confidence level, you know all you need to know about a confidence level. I'm 95% confident that yada, yada, yada. Alpha or significance level. I made a video last night specifically about alpha levels because the one and only email I got about help was about alpha levels. Thank you. I tweeted and emailed, and I got 2 responses.
We were together.
You don't ever get my email. I need to double check. No. Your email came back. It was an error. I need to double check.
Oh, I got your email, but I don't think I follow you on Twitter, which I guess I do. Because
What is
But
the
you got my
Twitter?
email. Kent63. No, Mr. Williamson. You need to give me your correct email address. Email me.
I've emailed you plenty of times.
I've got it. Somehow got it wrong. Okay, alpha. The alpha level is a threshold. So think about this. We have a certain value. Let's say this is 5%, 10%, 1%. Why not? I'm sorry. So these are all percentages. Okay? When you go to decide, when do I reject my null?
at your significance level, at the alpha level.
Let's suppose that you guys are all going to try to do a study, and you take your sample, you take your sample, you take your sample, and you're going to go in, and you're going to, well, when do you reject the null?
At your alpha level? The one that you
When it's
pick?
below the alpha level. Or
Well,
when the alpha level is
Could
below
we
the
all
alpha
have different alpha levels?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I keep
Absolutely.
mixing them up.
Okay? So, prior to now, the difference between 20 and 21, chapter 20 really put it into a perspective of Do you have evidence? Do you have a lot of evidence? Do you have a little bit of evidence, or do you have pretty much no evidence against the null hypothesis? Well, that's good and all, but I need to draw a line. I need to know, when do I make an absolute judgment? It has to be something. You can't use your own opinion. Say, oh, that looks like it, but someone else may look at your same results and say, I don't think so. So you need a line drawn to say, this is my threshold. And I'm just going to pick 5% because that's usually what we talk about. It is not magical. It's nothing special about 5%, but studies have shown that when things happen less than 5% of the time, people feel like that's a rare event. We reject rare events. Okay? And so if it falls under here, we call it rare. Or we call it RAR. We call it statistically significant. If my results are statistically significant, I reject the null. My p-value is less than my alpha. That tells me that what happened was rare. What happened shouldn't have happened. So I'm more likely to believe that what I assumed to start with, i.e., the null hypothesis, was not true. Therefore, that's why we reject the null, because of my significance level. We decide prior, and you never, ever make your alpha level after you know your p-value. Because technically, I could reject the null anytime. You just tell me your p-value, I'll pick an alpha level smaller than that.
So this has to do with your p-value. Whatever you get for your p-value.
That in practice, yes, definitely. And so the question is, where's the p-value? If you had a p-value, of, let's say, p equals 0.06, you'd fail to reject it, right? If we had a p-value of 0.04, we would reject.
What about 0.05?
Less than.
Okay.
There's debate.
I mean, yeah.
Okay, you are intended to be logical thinkers and to use your mind in that way. What I mean by that is, what if you had like 0.051 and 0.049? Is that different? Is that a different amount of evidence?
It's not.
Is it practically different? You're talking about a value that's pretty much the same number, but one rejects the null, one fails to reject it. In either case, you have a lot of evidence. You have evidence against the null hypothesis in that case. Even though you have evidence in one of those, the other one, you do not have enough evidence to reject the null because we decided on an alpha level of 0.05, a significance level of 0.05. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So your significance level judges on basically, when do I reject the null hypothesis? What's the level of evidence that I have to have? Remember, smaller is more evidence. That's difficult for a lot of you to get locked in. Smaller numbers means more a more significant, a rarer event. Something that the smaller that p-value gets, the more that result shouldn't have happened if the null were true. Remember that the p-value is a conditional probability, because I'm assuming if my null really is true, then this is the probability I should have gotten a sample like this. Does that make sense? Okay, questions about alpha level?
Is the dotted line on the 5%, that's the significance level, right?
That's right.
Okay.
I mean, that's the one that we picked for this example.
So, in every problem, are you gonna be either given a confidence level or intermediate, or alpha level in the problem? Because,
No. Sometimes they will simply ask you, here's a situation. I want you to provide evidence that provides statistical evidence if what they claim is true.
so then,
So-
can you just pick an alpha level?
You will pick your own alpha level. Most of the time, if you're left to pick, what do you think you pick? 0.05. Don't even think about it. Okay? There's no special reason we pick 0.05. It's just most common.
So then,
And if it's different, they're definitely going to give you the alpha level a lot of the time. 0.01. I mean, you could have 0.001. You could have all kinds of stuff.
so then,
It doesn't really matter.
if your alpha level is 0.5, or 0.05 or whatever,
We don't usually deal with alpha levels greater than 0.1, although they're perfectly legitimate. But more than 10%,
it's a lot.
that's really not very rare anymore.
Go below 0.05, you're automatically going to reject it.
But what is how does the confidence level like intervene with all of that? Is that, are you 95% confident that you can reject them all?
Let's come back to confidence level interpretation
Okay.
a little later. Here's how they're connected. I'll tell you this. Confidence levels and two-sided intervals are the same. Right?
I don't know what that is.
Not two-sided, a two-sided test. Right? So here's your...
I get confused on the two-sided, one-sided thing.
This is your 95%, right? So you're going to be given an interval of, let's just say this would be, let's say that's 50, and let's say this is 100 or whatever. And so you would have, I'm 95% confident that the true proportion falls between 50 and 100, blah, blah, blah. If I did a significance test, well, you have significance tests are your one prop Z tests. Any of your tests, they're called, in general, they're called significance tests. Confidence intervals and significance tests.
Okay.
2.5% and 2.5%.
So your alpha's gonna be 5.
So my alpha in this case is 5%, which we knew. But if I had done a significance test here, let's just say that we ended up rejecting the null. What I would have found is that if I were to convert this to z-scores, I would have found that I would have gotten values. It could have been out here somewhere or down here somewhere. The matter is, what I got in my result would have been outside that 95% interval.
It has to be.
If you rejected, take your quiz from yesterday. 8%, when they did the 95% interval, right? It was 5 to 7. So there were 8% wasn't in the interval. So according to your confidence interval, it was suggesting that you did lower that rate. Because 8% was too far above to be considered to be inside the interval. Now, their interval or their test was one-sided. They chose less than. Right? So I can't directly link 95% confidence interval, that's two-sided, to a one-sided test, less than or greater than. If I did not equal to and my confidence interval, they're going to be right hand in hand because it's two-sided to two-sided. And so there's only 2.5% in the area at the top of that instead of total of 5% all the way at the top. So that's the difference here. Let's talk about power. Not. So power, by definition, this is in your book, Power is the ability to detect a false null. Let's suppose that you have a distribution and that you take a sample, and from that distribution, it's normally distributed, everything works great, all your assumptions and conditions are good, that your mean is 100. Okay? What if your null hypothesis is that, p equal, or, well, this would be means, the mean is 100? Well, what I really want to know is, I have evidence that suggests that 120 really is my true mean. Power is the ability for you to detect that alternate mean. In order for me to find the power of a test, I actually have to be suggested. I have to be told what the other option is. Okay? I'm not going to go into that because, not today anyway. That's a lot more explanation than I want to go through right now. Okay? In order to find power, the only way to find power is for you to actually calculate type 2 error. Okay? It's confusing to start with, but once you figure out what to do, it's not that confusing.
Type 1 and type 2 error.
Yes, they're bad. Type 1 error is easy. That's alpha. We've been talking about that the whole time today.
Alpha is type 1 error.
Yes.
Error where
Alpha is never calculated. Okay? Alpha, you could also say that's also the same thing as,
Oh yeah, you divide it by 2. You do
that formula is the same formula we've been working with for a number of
for the
things.
inverse norm.
Right. And so,
What formula?
well, alpha you don't calculate. You chose alpha as 0.05 or 0.01 or whatever it is. That's also your type 1 error.
So point
Yeah.
5 would be type 1 error.
Yeah. There is no calculating type 1 error. It just is. Does that make sense?
Is that the probability of type 1 error?
Yes. The probability. Sorry. Okay. Your alpha is related to the type 1 error. It is the probability. But think about it. If you had a curve that, well, just look at this. I'll just go here. What if this is 5%, right, and of course you have 95% here. I'm going to choose random samples. Those random samples are going to vary, aren't they? They're going to vary every time I do it. So the question is, every time I take a sample, what percentage of the time am I going to have a value that falls down here? 5%. So I'm 95%, think about this, I'm 95% confident that, well, 5% of the time you're not going to be right. 5% of the time you're going to reject the null hypothesis when you shouldn't have.
Wait, what are you talking about?
Type 1 error. Okay, so let's go back and talk about just type 1 error for a minute.
Wait, but
Go ahead.
I thought the significance level was the 0.05.
It is.
So then,
Significance level, alpha level, type 1 error are all the same thing.
well, wait, no, but I thought the type 1 error was like the. Oh, never mind. Because the 5% of the time you'll reject.
I'm sorry, what were the 3 things that you said were all the
Alpha
same?
level, significance level, and type 1 error.
If any time it was vitally important that you have read your chapter, it was 3 days ago. Okay? If you haven't gone home and sat down and watched that video, and I know you haven't, I know. That's the one and only time many of you have watched it, because I can see the counts on YouTube. Okay? Yeah, it's been watched 8 times, and 3 of those are taken care of. And I watched it once, so. A type 1 error. Okay, given, and this is true. HO is true.
But we reject.
Right. The fact is that you know it's true. So let me give you some real life examples. I think I talked about this.
Wait, but for a type 1 error to occur, it would have to be, HO would have to be false. It would have to,
No,
because you
Wait,
don't
do you
reject it.
mistakenly reject it and it's true?
That's
You're
type 1.
supposed to reject it, but you do.
right. HO is true.
That's type 2, I thought, when it's,
And then type 2
when it's
is
false,
always
but you think it did, no.
accept it. And
super easy to get these mixed up.
you're not supposed to accept it.
I'm not
Can you give some
100%.
examples?
What you,
Am I right?
Yeah, what you said was right.
It's
Because
true,
that
but
makes,
you
that made a lot of
reject
sense when you drew the curve and you said with 95% confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, type 2, given that this quiz is correct, says that the incentive did work, but you think it didn't work. So that would mean that the null is true.
But you
Right,
rejected
no, the
it.
null is false. The null is that the incentive does
Let me
not
put
work.
it in context.
Right, never mind, okay, sorry, I'm thinking that the, never mind.
Let me give you two examples, NASA and the courtroom. No,
And the court, not in the court.
two different ones. Let's say that you work for NASA. Your job is you're that one person that is over the whole launch sequence, and you've got your hand on the stop button. Your job is to make sure everything is okay. If it's not, you cancel the launch. Okay? And so the null hypothesis is that everything is fine. Until there becomes enough evidence to suggest that something's wrong, we're going to stop it. Okay? We're not going to assume that something's wrong, then we would never have a launch. Doesn't make sense in that case. So we assume that everything's great. So we're running along, we're checking everything off, and then all of a sudden I get red flags. I reject my null and I say, stop, something's wrong, but I made a mistake. If I rejected the null and I was wrong, it has to be true.
Right.
Okay? So I rejected the null. I said, stop, something's wrong, but everything was okay. I made a mistake. Everything was actually good. Let's go with the launch. That's a type 1 error. Type 2 error. You're running your tests. Okay? You got your finger on the stop button. You're looking, you don't have enough evidence to suggest there's something wrong. You don't stop it, you let it go. Spaceship blows up. Everybody dies. You just made a type 2 error. Okay?
You thought the null was.
You thought that the null was true. So you didn't make it, you didn't reject it,
Yeah.
so I made a mistake. If I made a mistake and thought it was true, what's the option? What's the opposite? It has to be false.
But what is the null?
That everything's okay.
So what's courtroom?
Okay? So, first thing Jack says, so that means that type 2 errors are always more egregious. No. They're always worse. The deal is, every situation depends on what's going on. Right, Eric? If I'm awake, and I'm here, and I've had less than 4 hours of sleep, you can be awake. My meds keep me awake. I can't sleep.
Well, especially since you took that hydrocodone as well. I bet you're dragging.
Well, that's supposed to make you
Yeah, it makes
sleepy.
you sleep.
Eric keeping you awake?
What?
Little Eric?
No, not at night.
He sleeps through the night?
Most of the time. Shh. Courtroom example. I think this one probably is going to play out more easy to remember. I think your book actually gives this example.
Yeah, it does.
Null hypothesis. We've sort of touched on this before. There's always an innocent until proven guilty. That's our null hypothesis. When you walk into a courtroom, they assume that you're innocent until enough evidence can be brought against you. Once you breach that threshold, they're going to convict you. They're going to reject the null that they assumed to start with, and they're going to reject, or they're going to convict you of whatever crime it was.
But type 2 would be if you convict him, but he wasn't.
That's the question. Okay? Okay.
That makes so much more
If I
sense
re-
than it didn't when I read it.
If I reject my null when I shouldn't have, I just convicted an innocent man. If I failed to reject my null, that was type 1 error. If I failed to reject my null, but I should have, then I just let a guilty man walk free.
So the type 1 would be that you convicted an innocent man, but he was guilty.
Right?
I mean, you said he was innocent.
Wait, that was type 1?
Okay, I'll write this one out.
You can
So-
never accept the null, right?
No.
You always fail to reject
Never.
it.
If you accept that null, I will mark your paper wrong no matter what follows it.
You can either reject it or
Fail to reject it. Because by accepting it, that's basically saying I've proven it to be true. You have done nothing. You've done nothing of the such.
Can't you not prove that it's true or something?
You can provide evidence to support that idea or evidence against it. Remember, this is one little test. Nothing was ever proven with one little bitty test. I mean, technically speaking, have we proven the law of gravity? Have we proven it?
No, because there could be a baby that's born from babies.
What did he say?
It's not actually proven, it's just what happens all the time. We just haven't come across a situation where it happens differently, except in black holes and stuff. Then it gets all weird from there.
Yeah.
So, type 1. We said type 1 was what? Convict.
he's innocent, but he's
But
guilty.
if the null in that situation would be that he's innocent, right?
Yes.
Wait.
He said the null is innocent.
The null is always innocent until proven guilty. That's just, you've always heard that, right?
Yeah.
And so we would say, we would vindicate.
Oh, okay.
I spell vindicate. That's good enough.
It says fail to convict,
That's too long.
but it matches with. the-
Okay, you're right.
Yeah, like
You should have been here a couple of days ago. She was screaming, and
Oh,
then
that
they
was
just
so
all started
funny.
laughing. She was kidding.
Because
It was scary.
Like my heart.
This is third period?
Yeah, I think she was pretending. She was just
Wow.
I don't think you understand.
Just to be funny.
Crazy.
Did you scream during second period?
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
What the heck?
They're just goofing off, wouldn't listen to. I'm like, I am not in the mood for your games.
I was like, what did he say? Dude, he never screams anyways.
I was tired of their games. I was like, look, I have something to do today. Quit playing around.
Write them up. I dare you. You won't do it? You went hard?
And that class is a good class. They just don't take it serious. Yeah, they got used to this goofing off and not doing anything at all during the week.
Why'd you point at me? Because he knows
We
what I was
we were
doing.
talking about it. Yes, sir. What?
We all
Shy
heard it.
away from it. I would say.
Here we go. So something that you can remember the whole time. Shh. You can always remember that the null, for type 1 error, the null is always true. For type 2 error, the null is always false. So if you think about that, or maybe one of these examples helps you to remember, because what I need most from you about type 1 and type 2 error is I need you to internalize and conceptualize those errors.
Are we only gonna have to put them in like the context of the problem?
That's the biggest thing you're going to have to do with them. I will next week.
E on type, that's okay.
What?
Tip 2 or tip 2.
Oh.
Tiptoe.
We will go through type 2 error next week, a little more involved. I'll actually work it out for you and show you how to do it. But tip 2, that's fantastic. Huh.
Is it like?
Sound like a sneeze.
Like intense.
Sound like a Pokemon.